Welcome everybody to come to our office hour. Are you ready for 2023 new NIH data management and sharing mandate? For those who are new to dkNET, dkNET is a research resource information portal founded by NIDDK. You can go to dkNET.org to check the resource and the information there. We have several services, including resource to support rigor and reproducibility. We also help research to discover useful research resources. And we have a hypothesis center to assist research in generate research hypothesis, and fair data management resources, which is the main focus of today's office hour, that to help research to make your data fair. So now I'm going to turn the mic to Dr. Jeffrey Grethe.
What these office hours are meant to cover are the new data sharing mandates, that are starting in 2023, so this year, and actually very shortly. So the effective date of NIH's new policy on data management or sharing is January 25th, 2023. So that is in a couple of weeks. And what this new policy basically states is that, all data must be managed, most data should be shared, and that it should be shared as open as possible and as closed as necessary. So again, this is a very big change in terms of, who is required to share data from research study. Basically, all researchers now that receive NIH funding will be required to share their data. And one of the other changes is that the resource sharing plan is now been turned into a data management and sharing plan. So there's some additional information required in terms of submitting proposals, with this new data management and sharing plan. So we'll cover both. I'll go over both the briefly go over the new policy, and then also the new data management and sharing plan, and then we'll turn it over to questions and discussion around this new mandate. So the details. So the effective date for this new policy for competing grant applications, this is for any grant applications that are submitted to NIH for the January 25th or January 25th deadline and any subsequent receipt dates. So basically, if you are submitting a proposal, if the proposal is due January 25th or later, you will need this new data management and sharing plan, and the policy will apply to you. For contracts, it's the same the same deadline. For other funding agreements that NIH has, such as the OT mechanism, this will depend on the date of execution of that agreement. So basically, if your agreement is executed on or after January 25th, the policy will apply to you. And the policy defines what it means by scientific data. So that is the data that is collected as part of a study, but does not include, for example, all the information in laboratory notebooks, any preliminary analysis, drafts of scientific papers. So there is a sort of a clarification as to what they mean by the scientific data. And one of the key attributes of the policy is that it also defines when the data should be shared. So as I mentioned, NIH stipulates that the data should be made available as soon as possible and no later than the time of an associated publication. So if you're using data to support a publication, then that data must be made available when that publication goes live. If you are collecting data and it is not used at a publication, it still must be shared. And that is at the end of the award support period. So basically, the data that is collected as part of an award either has to be shared, when a publication comes out that refers to that data, or at the end of the award support period if that data, was not used in a publication. And the where of, where do you, are you supposed to be putting this data? And the policy encourages the use of established repositories to the extent possible. So, there are a number of repositories, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but there are a number of repositories that have been set up, for community-specific data, for also for generalist repositories that support many different types of data. And so these are all available for use in terms of making that data available. And how you're supposed to make that data available. So NIH encourages, the data management and sharing practices that are consistent with FAIR data principles. So FAIR principles are guidelines in terms of, what attributes data should have, that they are, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And we'll touch upon some of those attributes as we talk about the data management and sharing plan. Now, one of the differences in terms of this policy is that they actually do specify that the fees for long-term data preservation and sharing are allowed. So one of the issues with paying for long-term storage costs in the past was that you had to pay for NIH rules for spending of funds was that you had to pay for your use of data storage in the year that you had you have those funds, so it couldn't go beyond the award performance period. But this the policies adopted as part of this new plan allow you to spend funds for the preservation of the data, even if that preservation of data goes beyond the award period, but the funds have to be spent during the performance period of the award. So that is a slight difference there. And then they do mention possibilities of repercussions, if there's non-compliance with approved plan for an award. This may be taken into account for future funding decisions for the recipient institution. So they do outline potential issues if you don't follow your approved plan. So this is sort of the overview of this the new data sharing mandate. One thing to keep in mind when one is sharing data, and especially when using many repositories, is that you should also see your data as a research product, right? So for many years the primary research product has been journal articles and papers, but data can be a research product itself. And there are there has been work over the last number of years to develop data citation principles so that the citation of these data products can be cited just as other articles in the literature. And so that gives scholarly credit to data sets that have been published, and they can be tracked as well. So data set citations look just like regular citations. There's many of the data repositories also provide the DOIs, the digital object identifiers, for data sets, the same DOIs that you get for your published papers. And these then can be tracked, and so you can see also how many people have been using data sets. So again, trying to make data a core part of the research products that are there. Now, one of the other aspects of data sharing, and also why data data management plans are important, is that good data management is a gateway to easier data sharing, right? So if you're planning your project, defining how you're going to organize your data, how you're going to be doing, working through the data, and also looking at, the issues related to the data repositories that you may have outlined. All this comes into play when you're starting to do, your data management, for a study and planning that study. And the other, items to consider is that good data management is not just for others. It also relates to your ability to use your data. So for example, in your lab in the future, as you have potentially new graduate students, postdocs coming into the lab, well managed data, well described data can be used by your future self and future people in the lab in terms of access to that data and reuse of that data. And also, when collaborating, even potential future collaborations, sharing, developing the data management plans, following good data management practices, and the ability to share that data, can also benefit potential collaborations that you can start later. So again, it's not just about sharing to the outside, but also how you may be wanting to use your data down the road. So one of the other key aspects is that the resource sharing plan, as I mentioned, is now turning into a data management and sharing plan. So I'll go over a couple of the the sections, but there are a number of required elements of the NIH plan, including data type, related tools, software, and/or code, standards, data preservation, access, and associated timelines, access, distribution, or reuse considerations, and an oversight of data management and sharing. And so, this section, is really describes how compliance with the plan will be monitored and managed, the type of oversight, and by whom. So, in terms of data types, this is where you will just will need to describe the types of data that will be collected, the amounts and the size, how this data is going to be aggregated, the degree of data processing, a brief listing of the metadata that will be collected around the data itself, and any types of associated documentation that will be needed to facilitate interpretation of the scientific data. So really, this is the core description of the data that you see that will be collected as part of the study, and also a description of the quantity of that data. And this is important due to potential costs of the preservation of that data. So just being able to adequately describe the amount of data being collected, and the resultant data will allow you then to appropriately budget for any data preservation that is required. Standards. really outlines, how you will be collecting that data, how that data will be structured. So are you using, open formats that, anyone can access? Are there any closed formats, that will be used? Because if there are closed formats, then the next section that talks about software is going to be important, because if it is a closed format, then what is the availability of that software to access that data over longer periods of time? The use of data dictionaries describing, again, the metadata that's collected. How are you going to use? How are you going to identify, various aspects of the study in terms of the subjects, the samples you're collecting, what types of, identifier schemes are you using? Are you tagging any of this information, with available ontologies? So, for example, the use of unique identifiers. So, for example, the research resource identifiers, for describing, for identifying the antibodies or cell lines or model organisms being used. And then, any other data documentation around quality assurance and control. And so there are a number of standards out there, that are available. And so, there are some source resources that will help you actually navigate that. And so repositories often do enforce specific standards. So that's why it's always good, when you're beginning the process, of, designing, the experiments as part of a potential proposal, to think about, again, and this is what this data management and sharing plan will help do, is to think about where your data will end up, which repository or repositories, will you use. And that can drive sort of the standards that you will be required to use when providing data to those repositories. And so that is sort of a critical first step. And then there's resources such as fairsharing.org that do maintain a list of standards. They actually list standards that are used by various data repositories. So that is a very good resource to look at, regarding the availability of different standards. Now, for describing, related tools, software and code, really, this is meant to describe, the specialized tools needed to access, or manipulate, the shared scientific data, how those tools can be accessed, and, whether, such tools, especially if they're specialized tools or closed tools, whether such tools will remain available, as long as the scientific data remains available. And it can include, various types of information. So, what statistics, for example, what statistical packages, were used, were there any scripts or any custom workflows or pipelines developed, or will they be developed to analyze and process the data, and how will those be made, where will those be accessible? And how can users access that code? The data preservation, access, and associated timelines. Again, this is where one would specify, the name of the repositories, how the data will be will be able to be found, and how is it identified, and then the timeline, of making data available. And one of the things that we provide at dkNET, we've created a list of suggested data repositories, that will help potentially guide, where data can be placed. And as I had mentioned before, really think about where data will end up, from the result of the study, before you begin that process. And again, there are, best practices as outlined by NIH, is to submit your data to a repository that is specialized for your type of data or your domain. But if there isn't one, there are general purpose repositories available for your data. So again, there should be a place, for you to place your data, so you don't have to worry about setting up a repository or anything like that. But there are resources available, for making your data available. And as I said, there is, through dkNET, we do have, a listing of, a number of domain-specific repositories as well as generalist repositories. And, we provide you with information, on, the links that provide information on, how one submits data to the repository. We have links to the fair sharing website regarding that repository. So, provides information also potentially on cost. So we, hopefully, this is a good jumping off point, for you to look at, available data repositories. In terms of access, distribution, or reuse considerations, this is where you document, the informed consent, privacy and confidentiality protections, how data from, generated from human subjects will be controlled, and if there are any other additional restrictions imposed by federal, tribal, or state laws, or, any other regulations or policies, and any other considerations that may limit the extent of data sharing. So there are a number of tools that are being developed to, help with, generating these data management and sharing plans. So, one very popular tool is the DMP tool. As part of, our resources, we also do list some of these tools and information resources. And so, for example, the DMP tool, will actually, has a set of questions, that it will guide you through in terms of, filling out the information, for a data management sharing plan. Number of, your campus, your research institution is probably also generating guidance and potential sample language as well. And again, the whole, there are benefits for the data management and sharing plan. As I mentioned, it helps plan ahead. But basically, a key thing is this will help you define, the cost and also the % effort that is potentially needed, to do what's needed to submit data to a repository. So again, there's cost for potentially publishing your data in a repository, just like there are, costs for publishing a manuscript in a journal. But there's also the effort required, as part of the research study, to ensure that that data is structured in a way that the data can be made available, that it can be submitted to a repository. And so, that's a key aspect of, developing these data management and sharing plans, is also looking at, the effort required, in your lab to, make sure you're meeting this mandate. And, that also includes, what other resources you may need as well. So, there are benefits for, again, data management and the, doing the organization, and collection of metadata as early as possible, as it reduces this transition effort to move data from, your, local lab to potential data repository. And, the other potential benefits of using certain standards is that it also lowers development cost, as, number of tools are, being developed against, various standards, to help with, data validation, data QA, QC, data processing, and the like. So, I bet many are feeling, overwhelmed potentially with this new mandate, as it is, now applicable to, researchers, for that receive any funding from NIH. And so again, we're starting out, these office hours, to help people, to help answer questions, and also to help direct you to any repositories or any other resources that may be of assistance. And so, we do have a research data management overview page, which has, again, descriptions, has links to the NIH websites, has links to other resources as well. So again, make sure to stop by. There is also the NIH Grants Conference is in early February, I believe. Registration is going on now, but they do have some sessions on, the NIH data management and sharing policy. So that is another place, where you can, get in contact with, sort of what NIH, is providing there. So again, we're, dkNET, as Koei described earlier, we're meant to be a resource to the community. So don't hesitate to contact us. We also have a bottom right of the page, there's a contact help desk. So if you do have any questions down the road, don't hesitate to contact us. So that's sort of a brief overview. Something just sort of gets started, and we can now sort of open it up for questions and any discussion